of warm and cold. It's the subtleties of preparation that differentiates. Be, just putting a regular piece of goat cheese right on a salad, or just even having a small brulee. That smokiness, and then because of the way we're doing the smoked watermelon, it actually works together with that. Do you mind finishing this? I'll plate the. So my lovely assistant today is my a wonderful wife, Lisa, and my sister-in-law, Michelle. Huh? Oh, actually,
Thank you to Angela.
actually, need to toss all the. Give me all the greens.
All greens?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's okay. Oops. They were being very helpful. They just jumped the gun a little bit with the salad. No, it's fine.
I'll put the salad dressing on.
No, actually, put the rest of it in another container and toss it. So the one thing that Yono has always taught me is that people always forget to season the greens. The most important part is actually making sure that the greens itself have a lot of seasoning. So I'm using sea salt, and the reason you want it, like I said earlier, is that you want to have direct salt. Even though you might think that it'll actually make everything salty, it opens up the osmosis process, so that way the vinaigrette also penetrates the greens itself and adds not just a coating on the outside, but the flavors actually goes right through. So just subtleties of food. People forget that the greens itself are also very important. You have to treat it just as you would any piece of meat or produce. It's just gentlest care. So I have a bit of vinaigrette, and you want to remember about vinaigrettes is that you want to have just enough dressing to coat the bottom, but you don't want to pull at the bottom, because you just want enough to basically just hang on to all the greens. So at the end of you should have almost no liquid at the bottom of the bowl. So in this case, I think I had about 3 pounds of, or 2 pounds of arugula, and I put 1 cup of, just under a cup of vinaigrette. So in terms of plating, I'm going to borrow 1 cheese. Actually, I'll show you how to quenelle. For those of you who don't know how to quenelle, quenelle is basically a football shape, and the easiest way to do a quenelle is to take actually 2 spoons, and then use them to go back and forth. So you're basically taking the 2 spoons and then pushing it against each other to make basically a football shape. And this also works, for if you were to work with creme fraiche or sour cream, if you wanted to just have a more like an elegant look. Or ice cream as well. If you had 2 larger scoops of ice cream, that's how you would basically do quenelles. And then you can then use the spoons to basically plate at the center of the plate. Whoops. So I have a couple pieces of the watermelon rinds. Yep, I'll take the watermelon. No, the smoked watermelon. And then some of our smoked watermelon that I made this morning. With the, it was a combination of the applewood and the cherrywood smoked. Here. A very simple presentation, and basically all the flavors of summer. And then basically the other reason I picked the pumpkin seeds was that aside from being a relative of the watermelon, it just to have that crunch factor and almost mimic the feeling of having actual watermelon seeds. So that's the reason I had it in there. So if anyone's allergic to nuts, just let us know, and we'll make sure that there's no nuts on the salad as well. So this is, any questions about the watermelon salad? No? Okay. While we're waiting for the salads to be ready for you guys, I'm going to talk a bit about the wild boar that I'm doing for the entree, so I can get that started and cooked. Wild boar is actually not originally from the United States continent. The wild boar is actually, do you know where it went? The boar. Oh, it's in the fridge. Oh. Yeah, well, wild boar is actually from Europe. It was actually brought over to the United States by the conquistadors and all the Europeans that wanted to basically have a game and farm. So all the feral hogs are actually originally from, I think, Mid-East Europe, or Western Europe rather. And they were brought mainly into New England, Texas, and California. And what happened was, the reason we have now wild boar out there is because they escaped the game farms and are now basically an invasive species that has broken out into the wilds. And especially in Texas, they've been a huge problem, which is why they've basically opened hunting season on wild boars, because if you think of Texas as a whole state, a wild boar now accounts for almost 90% of, they are available in 90% of the entire state, which is a huge amount of land. And we get our wild boar through Adventures in Food locally, who in turn gets it from Rowena, Texas. And they actually have an amazing system out there, because in fact, wild boar out there is truly wild boar. They are basically hunted down by hunters, and then they're paid on the spot, per pound as soon as they get it off the field. But the really cool thing is that the hunters now have the ability to process the meats right on the spot. They actually have mobile meat processing factories that attaches at the back of trucks, or the pickups that they wheel out into the middle of the field. And within 30 minutes of shooting the hogs, they actually can process break it down completely, and have it, the entire trucks are refrigerated and also USDA inspected as well. So total control. It's not like before where you don't have to worry about where your meats are coming from. If you say, oh, it's a game, most people complain about game because they say, oh, there's an off taste or it's too gamey. Well, there's two reasons for gamey flavors. It's for one thing is most people are used to eating corn-fed beef, corn-fed pork. A lot of things in the United States are now, in the past 25 years, are now all corn-fed. So you're used to that type of flavor, meat that's proteins, pork that eat that sort of diet. And then you taste gaminess because, let's say, venison. Their primary diet is juniper berries. Twigs, you're basically feeling, tasting what they're eating as part of them, and that's also the reason why you cook certain things with, like let's say venison, you'd cook with juniper berries, and when you stew it, because that's actually what it was eaten at the time that it died as well. So our pork A wild boar is actually basically pork. It's nuttier. It has more full-bodied flavor than pork, though, and it's actually leaner, far leaner than pork. So if you're used to eating, let's say, medium on your pork, you might actually want to eat mid-rare on your wild boar, because the fact that these pigs are out in the wild they are eating basically a very natural diet, and they're harvested when the sows are between 90 and 250 pounds. And then that's like the peak flavor. Anything older or larger will actually have a bit of an off taste, or it's because of just their diet and how they lived. But for the most part, this is basically a pork, the wild boar short loin, which is equivalent to, if you were thinking as a cow, a strip. This is the strip steak essentially from the wild boar. Basically, if you were to imagine like the tail section of the pig, say it's the head, the tail. You got the around, which is the back of the pig. Then you the shank, which is the bottom part. Then you got the tenderloin, the sirloin, top sirloin, the sirloin, and then the short loin is right in front of there before. It's basically the halfway point between. It's I guess 1/4 point between the halfway and for the end of the portion of the pig. And basically you can treat this exactly the way you would treat sirloin from a cow. Simply, salt, pepper. In this case, most people say, "Oh, I want to use a fancy salt." And I actually have like Hawaiian sea salt as well, but anything that's a fancy salt, or that has smoked salt, you want to save it as a finishing salt for the end, because that'll, when you do the cooking, what happens with high heat is that salt disintegrates, and you basically lose some of the factor of, if you're using an expensive salt to cook with. So, simply just use a regular sea salt. Any questions on the wild boar?
Really good.
Oh, thank you.
Very good.
Yep. Sure. Sure. Yono has been always trying to use game meat forever, and we've used Adventures in Food, who used to be downtown Albany. And then among wild boar, we also can get elk, bison. We've gotten other types of partridge, other game birds as well. We get alligator. Occasionally, they even get more exotic things over there, as well as I think 3 months ago they had a 100-pound boa constrictor that they received. Oh no, it's a 200-pound boa constrictor that they received from Brazil. So they have the most random game meats available as well. And on top of meats, they work with cheeses as well, and other specialty products, blue cornmeal, things that you wouldn't normally find in the Price Chopper, or you might find it at Honest Weight Food Co-op, but they're actually cheaper because they deal primarily to restaurants, and specialties. But they're open to the public, which is the amazing thing. And anyone can walk in there and ask, "Hey, can I have some wild boar?" And the thing that most people don't realize, even though it's game, you think that it would be so expensive, but think I paid only $9 a pound for the wild boar short loins, which is far cheaper than you would pay for a beef. It's when it's not on sale. So. Yep. Well, our regular things on our menu is basically alligator, kangaroo, and it's exotic. But we're used to it now, so it's not too exotic for us. But I mean, the amazing thing about these cuts of meats is just the amount of leanness they have. No fat. You're basically, when you get a tenderloin of kangaroo, it's just pure flavor all the way across. And then we just suggest having it rare, mid-rare, and then always for whatever you're used to eating for regular meats, especially with game because they're so lean, always go at least one temperature down. And if recently, I think a few weeks ago, the USDA announced that they no longer require that pork need to be cooked to well done, to mid-well, because we don't have to worry about trichinosis anymore. That disease hasn't been around in almost, I think, 50 years. So you could actually, what they've